UFC Vegas 99 betting show. We have 11 fights scheduled for this Saturday. I'm Jon Kelly. Let's hear the picks. Kicking things off in the heavyweight division, we have Robelis Despaigne, a minus 340 favorite. Now the comeback on Austin Lane is plus 270. And we'll start on the Despaigne side. You guys know he comes from an Olympic level striking background, high level Taekwondo background, and the striking is on point. He moves very well for the heavyweight division, and he's got serious knockout power. But the downside is that he's very one-dimensional. We saw that in his last fight against Waldo Cortez Acosta, where he was able to basically withstand the early storm, force him to defensively grapple a little bit and take him into deeper waters, where Acosta has good cardio, was able to weaponize that and take over. I just don't think that's going to be the case here for Austin Lane. Lane does have some wrestling, and he's going to go to that early, probably from the opening bell. And I actually expect him to land a takedown or two. I just don't expect him to get a finish. And if that's the case, he's going to start to fade. It happens in just about all of his fights. It happened the last time out against Hanata Deniz, where he had wrestling success in that first round. And then as soon as he started to not be able to be gifted top position, he had to eat a couple shots, and he's got a lot of quit in him. And I could see that here. I could see it happening even earlier if he's unable to get the takedowns, where Despaigne just lands a kill shot early, hurts him, and puts him out. So it's going to be Despaigne by TKO. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Melissa Martinez making her follow-up to her UFC debut, which was 2 years ago, where she lost the decision against Elise Reed. She ended up getting dropped in the first round there, and now she's coming off a sizable layoff. She's currently a minus 130 favorite. The comeback on Alice Ardelene is plus 110, and Ardelene is also making her follow-up to her UFC debut, where she fought Shauna Bannon and ended up losing a split decision there. And I think the game plan is going to be similar. Ardelene is going to have to lean on those takedowns, because we know Melissa Martinez, coming from the high-level kickboxing background, she's very one-dimensional. She wants to keep the fight on the feet. If you fight her at range, she's going to have a lot of success blasting away with those leg kicks. But if you force her to grapple and you start to kind of test some of the other aspects of her game, that's where I think she's going to start to struggle. But in this case against Ardelene, I just don't think Ardelene is skilled enough. Maybe she can land a takedown or two. I expect to see some improvements from Martinez in that area. Not to say that she's, super leveled up her grappling to the point where now she's just an all-around, well-rounded stud. But I do think the 2-year layoff, we know she's got the high-level striking. It's going to be a massive advantage in this fight. Her brother just earned a UFC contract on Contender Series as well, so she's been training with him and staying active. So I'm going to slightly favor Martinez. I think she's kind of untrustworthy because she is so one-dimensional, similar to Despaigne. But I think the matchup's relatively favorable to where she's going to get her hand raised here. We'll say it's Martinez by decision. That's the official pick. And speaking of Elise Reed, she's now facing Jessica Penne, and she's a minus 180 favorite. The comeback on Penne is plus 150. And I could just never lay this type of juice on Elise Reed. She is just, not very good, but also she's got a clear weakness, and that is with her defensive grappling. She defends takedowns at under 50% in the UFC, and pretty much every fight that she loses, she ends up, giving up takedowns, control time, potentially even getting submitted. Some of those fights she was able to kind of work her way back and still get the nod. I just have some concerns, especially with her as a moderate favorite here against somebody that is going to be aggressive in pursuing the grappling. We know Penne holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and is likely going to be pretty aggressive in pursuing the grappling. The concern with Penne is she's almost 42 years old, and she's also, just like Reed is one-dimensional and wants to keep the fight on the feet, Penne's super one-dimensional because on the feet, she's going to be a step behind. She's going to get busted up, hit with the leg kicks. She's not going to win the fight unless she gets her grappling going. The thing is, like I said, at this price, I'm willing to kind of take a chance. I don't know if I'm going to actually bet her or not, but I definitely think she's the value side because of the grappling path to victory, and I am going to side with her. We'll say it's Penne by submission. That's the official pick. And next up, we have Jocelyn Edwards, a minus 278 favorite. The comeback on Tamaris Vidal is plus 225. And we'll start on the Edwards side. She's currently on a 2-fight losing streak. And you guys know me, I'm not a huge Edwards guy. But I also think this is a really favorable matchup for her because not only do I expect her to be competitive, maybe even winning when the fight plays out on the feet, but I think there's a massive wrestling advantage here for Edwards where we've seen in the past, Edwards, especially early on in the UFC, she struggled when people tried to take her down, control her. But I actually think she's made significant leaps in her wrestling and grappling to where we've seen her kind of rely on that more recently, where she landed 5 takedowns against Nora Cornoli. She's going to her grappling a lot more. She's also got some opportunistic submission attempts that she's tried in a couple of those fights. She hasn't succeeded yet, but I think this could be a spot where the takedowns are going to be there. She's going to be competitive on the feet, and I also think she could potentially find that submission as well. So I'm going to keep an eye out to see what type of big numbers are out there in the prop market once they open up on more of these books. But I do think the wrestling path is going to be really significant here for Edwards because Vidal is just so one-dimensional, and she's proven not only can she not defend takedowns, but she has basically no idea how to work back up from her feet. So I expect Edwards to really look dominant in terms of the grappling here and get her hand raised. We'll say it's Edwards by decision. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Gene Matsumoto, a -225 favorite with Brad Katona on the comeback at +185. And this is one where I kind of see Matsumoto as being a younger, more refined version of Brad Katona because he's a very well-rounded prospect. He's a 15-0 undefeated fighter fighting out of Brazil. And you see it in his fights, right? Like he's got very sharp leg kicks, good boxing, good grappling as well. The only real concern with Matsumoto is that at times, especially on the regional scene and early on against Dan Argueta in his UFC debut, he can be taken down and he can be controlled by better grapplers. The question is whether or not you consider Brad Katona to fit that mold because Katona's generally a guy that fights on thin margins, doesn't have a ton of power, isn't going to put a ton of volume out there, and he is going to mix in some wrestling, but he's not a huge threat to finish on the mat either. So it's one of those fights where you're kind of banking on Katona having that wrestling success. I'm just less convinced that he's going to be able to do that to a meaningful extent where he's actually scoring damage on the mat or advancing position, threatening to finish, or even banking a ton of control time here. I just have concerns with him. And then on the feet, I expect it to be very competitive. I think Matsumoto carries more power. I think his leg kicks are better as well. And I just think I trust him to be doing a little bit more. So while I expect Katona to be competitive here, I do think Matsumoto does enough to get his hand raised, and this is one I feel pretty confident ends up seeing the judges' scorecards. I don't think either guy is much of a threat to finish the other, so I think it's hitting the judges' scorecards. We'll say it's Matsumoto by decision. That's the official pick. And next fight up, this one's in the flyweight division as Asu Almabayev is a -194 favorite. The comeback on Matheus Nicolau is +168. And this is one where we have Almabayev, who we know is very one-dimensional. The game plan for him is going to be to aggressively wrestle, aggressively get that grappling going. He's a 20-2 prospect. 8 of his wins have come by submission, but he's also a guy that needs to get that grappling success because on the feet, he's very limited. He's not going to put a ton of volume out there. He seems to swing pretty hard, but the knockouts just haven't materialized even on the regional scene. So he's definitely more known to be a decision type of fighter. Now that could change here against Matheus Nicolau, who we know has that one clear weakness. It's the durability. He's been knocked out 4 times in his career, and at flyweight, that's a huge concern. Outside of the durability issues, though, he's a very well-rounded fighter. On the feet, he's very sharp defensively. He also defends takedowns very well at 93%, and that's going to be tested here. It basically comes down to A, whether or not you think Nicolau's chin is complete dust, and B, if you think he can keep the fight on the feet. Those are 2 concerns that I have with him, and I'm just not going to be able to overlook it because I think Almabayev not only is just very aggressive with the wrestling, even if he's unable to get the takedowns or secure position, I think he's going to be, smushing Nicolau up along the fence, making it hard for Nicolau, who's low volume in general, to be producing any sort of offense. But also, I'm kind of the belief that Nicolau's chin is definitely maybe not complete dust, but definitely getting there. And Almabayev, even though he doesn't have a ton of knockout power, he does swing pretty hard. We saw him hurt Vergara a little bit with a big left hook. I think he has the potential to hurt him on the feet, but also just kind of neutralize any offense coming back, and the upside of maybe just landing multiple takedowns as well and getting it done that way. So we'll say it's Almabayev by decision. That's the official pick. Next up, we have Daniel Pineda, -112 favorite, with Darren Elkins on the comeback at -108. Elkins has definitely seen some line movement in his favor, and I think it makes sense because Elkins is a guy, even at 40 years old, we know what he's going to bring to the table. A ton of heart, great durability for the most part. He has been knocked out multiple times, but the dude can certainly still take some damage. And I just think he's got a clear path to victory if he can extend this fight, lean on his wrestling. He's only been submitted once in his career by Charles Oliveira back in the day. We know he's generally very sharp in terms of the defensive grappling. So against somebody like Pineda, who all of his wins have come inside the distance. The dude has never won by decision. Every time it's gone the distance, he's lost. And I think that speaks to his fighting style and his gas tank, because the dude always fades after round one. He comes out very aggressive. He's got very sharp leg kicks, and he's an opportunistic submission grappler, holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. But unless he's able to catch Elkins early here, I think he's going to struggle, because we've seen it time and time again from Darren the Damage Elkins, is that he's able to survive that early storm. He's not going to quit, and he's going to keep on coming in the second and third rounds. So it's one where I could see Pineda having some success, but I think it's more so front-loaded, and Elkins is able to take over. So this is one where I think Elkins is for sure a live betting target, but also I think Elkins, middle and late round stoppage props are going to be pretty good here. Sub 2-3 angles I like quite a bit. So give me the Damage. I know he's old, but let's be honest, Pineda's old too, and he's never had good cardio. So I'm going to go with the guy who I trust a little bit more to fight for my money down the stretch, and that's Darren Elkins. Hopefully he can get it done one last time for us. Elkins by submission. That's the official pick. And next fight up in the bantamweight division, we have Jake Hadley taking on Cameron Smotherman. Now, this one was originally supposed to be Brady Highstand versus Jake Hadley, which I think would have been a much more competitive matchup and one that I would like to see. This one, on the other hand, I think it's going to favor Jake Hadley, and I don't think there's odds out yet, but I do expect Hadley to be a significant size favorite, because not only is it short notice for Cameron Smotherman, but the dude is very one-dimensional. You guys remember him from Contender Series last season. He fought Charalampos Gregorio. We were on Gregorio big as a sizable underdog there, and he knocked him out in the first round. But also Smotherman has issues in the past with grapplers that are not nearly the level of Jake Hadley, being able to just hold him along the fence, neutralize his offense. So while he is a powerful puncher and he's rattled off a couple impressive finishes since that Contender Series loss, I still think those defensive grappling issues are going to play a big factor here against Jake Hadley. So, and even on the feet, Hadley's pretty solid defensively. He'll be competitive there as well. And then I think he could lean on the wrestling and the grappling to get his hand raised. We'll say it's Hadley by decision. That's the official pick. Next fight up, we have Charles Johnson, a -225 favorite. The comeback on Mudaerji is +185. And we'll start on the Johnson side. He's put together a nice win streak now. He's coming off that impressive come-from-behind knockout victory over Joshua Van. And this is actually the first time, his last 4 fights, he was priced as the underdog. So he's finally getting some respect in the market here as a sizable favorite. And I believe it's warranted, because not only is he going to be competitive on the feet, he's also extremely durable, having never been finished in his UFC career, and he's facing somebody in Mudaerji who's a one-dimensional power puncher. 13 of his 16 professional wins have come by knockout. We also know historically he starts to fade after that first round. So unless he's able to hurt Johnson early and knock him out, I expect that to be the case here. He also has a clear issue with his defensive grappling, where he can not only give up takedowns, but he has an issue defending submissions. He's been submitted in all 6 of his professional losses. So it's one where I think Mudaerji can have some success early, because Johnson tends to start pretty slow. But I think it's definitely going to be front-loaded here. And this is another one where I like the sub 2-3 angle for Charles Johnson, and that is going to be the pick. We'll say it's Johnson by submission. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our co-main event as Kyler Phillips comes in as the biggest betting favorite on the card at minus 440. The comeback on Rob Font is plus 340. And I do favor the Kyler Phillips side. Not only is he 6-1 in the UFC with that one loss being the controversial majority decision against Raulian Paiva, where he earned a 10-8 in the first round and then gassed out. So the dude certainly has a solid skill set. And outside of the cardio, he's very well-rounded. On the feet, he's very aggressive early. He's got knockout power. He's going to swing wildly, but we know he can mix in the grappling. He averages over 2 takedowns per 15 minutes. He holds a black belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and he can find finishes on the mat as well. The only concern, like I mentioned, is that he does not manage that cardio very well. Historically, outside of that, aggressive first round, he definitely starts to slow down, and that's the worry when you see him priced as a big favorite. But I think the takedowns are going to be there against Rob Font, who definitely his best days are behind him. I think it's safe to say at this point. Not that he's completely washed. The dude's still a very good striker, strong jab, can mix in the leg kicks as well. He's a very good fighter if he could keep it upright on the feet. But I just don't have any confidence in him to be able to do that here. He defends takedowns at under 50% in the UFC. We saw that was the main reason he lost against Figueiredo. We've seen it multiple times in the past as well. Like, that's the clear leak in his game. And I don't expect him to be able to fix that, especially against a more aggressive wrestler, a guy who's super physically strong as well in Kyler Phillips. So it's one where, yes, the cardio is a concern on the Phillips side, but A, I think he could potentially finish Rob Font, and B, even if he doesn't and he starts to get a little bit tired, I still think the takedowns will be there to where he'll be able to just kind of lay on him before it ends up hitting the judges' scorecards. We'll say it's Phillips by decision. That's the official pick. Which brings us to our main event in the middleweight division as Anthony Hernandez is a minus 135 favorite with Michel Pereira on the comeback at plus 114. And this is an awesome matchup because on one hand, you have the exciting, fan-friendly style of Michel Pereira where he's always looking to put on a show, backflipping into guard, jumping off the cage, trying to land something big. The dude is a wild man, but that's also, that's why fans love him. But bettors kind of hate him because you just cannot trust the fight IQ. Even though at other times he's been a lot more conservative, going to the wrestling, consolidating position, not doing anything stupid just to secure his victories. It's just that I don't think you can bank on that from fight to fight. And especially in his first main event here, I would lean that he's going to be wanting to put on a show, especially since he's finished his last 3 opponents in the first round. Now, I think he's generally been giving some really favorable matchups over pretty much his UFC career, but especially recently. And this is not a favorable matchup. So he's really going to have to prove it because generally his win condition here is an early knockout, but I don't know if he's going to be able to do that against Anthony Hernandez. And if he can't, I think Hernandez is the exact type of style that he's going to struggle with because Hernandez not only pushes a relentless grappling pace, 8 of his 12 wins have come by submission, so we know he's capable of finding a finish as well, averaging over 6.5 takedowns per 15 minutes, but he's got great cardio. So he's going to keep up that pace and eventually try to break you over the course of 25 minutes here. And I don't expect it to last that long. So it's one where Pereira is going to need to hurt him early. And yes, that's possible. We've seen Hernandez be hurt. He's been hurt to the body as well. But I think what's more likely is that Hernandez is able to survive any type of early blitz from Pereira, get the takedowns, really just drowned him with the pace and pressure of that grappling, and eventually find a finish of his own. We'll say it's Hernandez by submission. That's the official pick. And as always, guys, fightnumbers.com will have all of my projections, ton of other stuff up there as well. The Fight Prop Finder, which is completely free. Always be sure to get the best price in the market, and the way you do that is at fightnumbers.com. As always, appreciate you guys watching. Best of luck, and we'll see you next week.